The Story of the Prince with Donkey Ears. Once upon a time there lived a king and queen who were very unhappy because they couldn't have any children. They decided to go deep into the woods and meet the three fairies: the beautiful fairy, the intelligent fairy, and the wise fairy. After listening to the king, the fairies decided to grant him the wish of a son. The beautiful fairy said, "My wish is that your son will be the most handsome of all men." Then the intelligent fairy said, "My wish is for your son to be very, very smart." Then came the wise fairy, who said to everyone's astonishment, "And my wish for the prince is for him to have the ears of a donkey." And then the three fairies disappeared. The prince was born, and as the years passed, he indeed grew into a beautiful and intelligent boy. Yet, one day, the king noticed that two small donkey ears were starting to grow on the prince's head. Ashamed, he decreed that the prince was to use a special hat that would cover his ears, and that he was never to take it off. The prince was not to know about his donkey ears. As he grew older, the prince got used to everybody praising him for his beauty and his brains, and as a result, the prince soon became vain and would criticize everyone around him. Nobody was good enough for the prince. Their head was too big, or their legs were too short, or they were too dumb. Everyone had faults, except, of course, for him. He was the perfect prince. But the prince's hair had grown very long, and so the king decided to call the royal barber to give the prince a haircut. When the royal barber took the prince's hat off, he was surprised, as was the prince, to see the donkey ears. The king quickly said to the man, "If you tell this to anyone, I'll send you to prison for life." So the barber cut the prince's hair and kept the secret, and the prince stayed in the palace, where he was very, very sad. But several days passed, and the barber could no longer keep that secret to himself. So he decided to leave the village and walk out to the meadow, where he dug a hole deep in the ground, and into it he yelled,
"The prince has donkey ears! The prince has donkey ears!"
Feeling relieved, the barber went back home. Soon thereafter, a reed field grew upon that ground, and every time the wind would blow, it seemed to whisper, "The prince has donkey ears! The prince has donkey ears!" People started to get suspicious, and they began whispering to each other that the hat the prince always wore was used to hide his donkey ears. And soon everyone started to make fun of the prince. One day, the prince pulled off his hat and said to all the villagers, "Yes, it's true. I have donkey ears, and I'm so sorry that in the past I would point out all your faults, unaware I could have even bigger ones." At that moment, the wise fairy appeared and said, "See, little prince, if it wasn't for me, you would have turned into a vain and selfish man. You need donkey ears no more." And with a wave of her wand, the donkey ears disappeared. And the prince turned into a good and compassionate man who, whenever he heard someone making fun of others, would say, "Be careful, my friend. You never know when you'll get donkey ears." The end.